Okay, lesson 24. We continue reading Hatha Yoga Pradipika, chapter 1, Sutra 11. Haven't we seen this before? The yogin desirous of obtaining perfection, siddhi, should keep Hatha Yoga very secret, for it is potent when kept secret and ineffective when injudiciously revealed. We talked about this before, secret. But there's an element that we haven't mentioned before. Maybe you've already experienced that. Some of you have told me, gosh, after class I feel so good. And I go home and I feel like walking on clouds. And so it is expected, not necessarily, but possible, that you come home and you meet your family members or you meet friends and you're so enthusiastic that you say, hey, what I learned today, listen what I have to tell you. And whoever is listening, their jaw drops and they think, oh my God, what the hell happened with you? Yoga is a very systematic framework that needs to be learned from the very beginning. So you started with yama, niyama. Your first lesson was about non-violence. Asana, of course. Very systematically and gradually, emphasis on gradually, we work towards pranayama. Now, try to tell your partner or colleague or your child, if you have children, about pranayama without them having gone through the proper systematic approach. They really think you have lost it. They really think, how can you believe in something like that? Impossible, crazy. Same way, if I, in lesson 1, had started talking about pranayama or mudra, you would probably not have come back the next Sunday. It goes too fast, it doesn't make sense. You are used to living in a rational world, the world of matter, gross matter. When you start talking about spiritual affairs, that's a whole new dimension that opens up for most people. Not everybody, some people are quite sensitive and intuitively familiar with it, but for many people it would come as a shock. So this is the third sutra that we come across where you are being asked to be secretive about your yoga. But what is important is that the sutra ends saying, for yoga is very potent when kept secret, but ineffective when injudiciously revealed. Secret is not necessarily meaning that you should keep it entirely to yourself. It's too wonderful not to share. But if you decide to share, do it properly. Because the current situation in the world is that most yoga classes are in fact in line with this last sentence. Yoga that is injudiciously revealed and therefore ineffective. Okay, it's nice as an exercise. But it doesn't lead to opening up of the crown chakra. It doesn't lead to all the wonderful benefits that yoga and other spiritual practices for that matter promise, ineffective when injudiciously revealed. But you follow the curriculum properly, systematically, step by step, it does indeed become a very powerful tool to transform darkness into light, to transform the ignorant human being into a wise person, a person with intuition, insight and wisdom. That is what this means. Don't forget also that the time that this was written, every tribe, every community had their own witch doctor, magician, which are no different than a yogi. They were trained in the same way as yoga trains people. Those people used all kinds of rituals to distinguish themselves from the normal people. Those rituals are all symbolical. Their real power is their ability to contemplate, so they give advice to the people, they guide the people, they have visions about things that might happen, clairvoyance, so to speak, but also healing capacities. Healing with herbs, but mostly with energy, like Reiki heals with energy. Yoga is preparing to become a healer. That is one of the things that you could choose to do once you have laid the foundation. But people in the time that this was written were not rational. Their lives was controlled by fear, especially fear of the unknown. So it is very possible that if you have siddhis, yoga leads to siddhis, which are supernatural or paranormal abilities. If you possess siddhis and you manifest them in the presence of superstitious people filled with fear of the unknown, they might become very scared of you. In the past, that would end up into witch hunts. People being accused of witchcraft and then being killed. It's still happening today in certain societies. But in the past, it was commonplace everywhere around the world. Countries where people are more and more rational, we don't believe in that anymore. Or at least we're not scared of the supernatural and the paranormal anymore. But uneducated, irrational people, just out of sheer animal fear of the unknown, they would just kill you if you are possessing siddhis, if you have paranormal abilities. So that's another reason to be careful with how you reveal what you're capable of or what you know. You will see, all of you, including me, I have been confronted with people's jaws dropping. It will happen to you too. And when that happens, just remember this. Share it, but do it properly. Start with yama, niyama. Build it up systematically, step by step. Sutra 12. He or she who practices Hatha Yoga should live alone in a small hermitage, situated in a place free from rocks, water and fire to the extent of a bow's length, and in a virtuous, well-ruled kingdom, which is prosperous and free of disturbances. There's so many things to tell about this. You should live alone, isolated, in a hut. There is a wonderful book from a female Buddhist. I forgot her name again. She lives in Italy now these days, but she lived in the Himalayas for 12 years in a cave. And the book that she wrote is called Cave in the Snow. Tenzin Palmo is her name. She describes exactly that she lived alone in a hut, growing her own vegetables, and only very rarely having visitors to come bring things, necessities that she couldn't grow in the garden. But what is described in this sutra is the ideal situations for those higher characteristics in the human being to manifest, to be nurtured. What you see here described is the ideal society, in fact. But first, it should be situated in a place free from rocks, water, and fire. And if you've read the text, you see that Ajita took that literal. He explained literally that being too close into proximity of rocks, water, and fire disturbs your sattva. With time, in contemplation, I realized that this has nothing to do with real rocks, water, and fire. This is about the three lowest chakras. The location of it's earth, water, fire. Rocks, water, fire. The three lowest chakras are the location of your lowest instincts, animal instincts. Being free from earth, water, and fire means that all your basic needs must be taken care of if you want to pursue the spiritual path. Because if you have to survive, struggle to survive, if you're living full of fear because of natural threats or wild animals or bands gangs of robbers roaming the country that could visit your village any day, any time, you cannot focus on spiritual endeavor. Therefore, monasteries, Buddhist temples, all kinds of temples, very often are built in very remote places. Have you been to Kanaksan, by the way? Kanaksan? Have you been to the temple? If you've been there, you know that you have to travel up the mountain more than an hour to get there. It's a heavy trip to actually get there. There's no road. You cannot get there any other way than climbing the mountain and coming down off it again. Why would they?
Oh, just to add to that though, like in Dharamsala, at least when we were on retreat, what they told us is that it's good for developing yourself, but the virtuous people can't stay in the mountains after you've perfected yourself. You need to come down into the towns and cities to help people.
Yes. Yes, I think I've mentioned that before. I will touch upon that again. That's very important. We will come to that when we discuss the philosophy of the kleshas. No, it's good that you mentioned that. But why would they build it so far away? Some people will say, yeah, austerity. The monk that has to go up and down that mountain becomes very healthy, very strong. But the initial reason to build it so far away is to be totally isolated. No disturbances. Any people roaming the land looking for food or other treasure, they will never take the effort to go all the way up that mountain and to rob the monastery or the temple or kill the monks living there. temples, monasteries, these days, of course, they can be anywhere. You sometimes see modern, you see this, if you see this swastika in your neighborhood, there is a little Buddhist temple in your street. They're everywhere in Korea. But that's modern. The older temples are all far away. What is required as a yogi to thrive is to create circumstances that are stable with the least distractions possible. Now, staying away from earth, fire and rocks, that shouldn't be so difficult in a sophisticated society where we live, because the food is there. We do not have to be afraid that the harvest will fail or bad weather will destroy our crop, or we have fridges in which we can keep food for a long time, etc. Many of the basic needs are easy to take care of. But then there are many kind of luxurious needs, especially when you're a bit younger. You feel attracted to adventure, you feel attracted to excitement. You go out with friends, drinking, eating, dancing, etc., which is good to enjoy yourself. But it becomes a distraction if you are pursuing the spiritual path. Those are fulfilling needs that are in those three lower chakras, earth, water and fire center. So you try to avoid any kind of distraction that is related to your lower emotions, desires and instincts. So instincts is related to creating safety, a haven of safety. And emotions and desires is related to how your senses are being stimulated, or the lack of it, of course, trying to avoid that stimulation. If you understand this, you understand why temples and monasteries are built the way they are and in the location where they have been built. A well-ruled kingdom. This is the reason why your government is doing so much effort. A government, one of the greatest goals of a government is the well-being of its citizens. Why? Because citizens that are comfortable are productive. And society as a whole starts to thrive. The taxes are being paid and society is being built up. That is a well-ruled kingdom. That is sattva on a macro scale. You can very easily see that societies that are at war are devolving, are going down the drain. They are not growing. Societies that are stable, that do everything they can using diplomacy to avoid conflict and, in the worst case scenario, a real war, those countries are wealthy, are thriving, are constantly growing and evolving. That is the power of sattva. And sattva is peace. Peace is sattva. We use the two words as if they are two different concepts, but peace is exactly that, sattva. And it is also the condition in which there is no war. There is a reason why we have used that word for the condition where there is no war. As soon as the war is over and stability occurs, everything starts to flourish. Society as a whole and people as individuals. This is important for everybody, but for the person pursuing the spiritual path, at least in the first stages of your development, this is essential. And like Tenzin mentioned, it is useless to stay in that environment, your temple on the top of the mountain. There has to be a day that you come out of your temple and go down to the village and start living among the people. It is very likely that your abbot, the spiritual leader of the center where you are living, at some day will tell you to actually go, fly out, and serve the people. We will come back to that after lesson 30, when we introduce the philosophy of the kleshas. Thirteenth Sutra. The Mata should have a small door and should be without any windows. It should be level and without any holes in the floor. It should be neither too high, too low, nor too long. It should be very clean, being well smeared with cow dung and free from all insects. Outside it should be attractive with a small hall, mandapa, which is actually a veranda, a raised seat and a well, and surrounded by a wall. These are the characteristics of a yoga mata as laid down by the Siddhas who have practiced Hatha Yoga. This is an extension of Sutra 12, but it shouldn't have windows. Why not? Yeah, the most wonderful places, the most expensive real estate has bay windows, huge windows. Except when they wrote this book, windows meant a hole in the wall, not a window pane. Because glass didn't exist yet in the form of windows. So that meant bugs could fly in and out of your window if you had one, in the hole in the wall. The weather, the rain, the wind, the cold, the heat, dust, anything. So that would all be a distraction. Or if you can afford to have a house with huge windows that give a nice view, that is in itself very spiritual. I haven't told you this when we discussed the crown chakra, but it's important that we do. We'll do it now. You know, big companies, multinational companies, banks, insurance companies, companies that deal with lots of people and lots of money, they have a director, they have a board of directors. You know, they are always located on the highest floor of the building. Before I came to Korea, I worked in plant maintenance. If you go to a hospital, bank, insurance company, all the big office buildings, if you see that all the plants there are in very good condition, and you wonder how that is possible, it is because they hire professionals to take care of those plants. I did that kind of work. That means that you come in places where other people never get. Because the board of directors are always located in a part of the building that is isolated from the rest of the building. The elevator goes up to the 14th floor. The board of directors is on the 15th and 16th floor. You need an electronic card or a code to get to those floors. So taking care of they have the most expensive plants there, so I have access there. And what you see is exactly what is described here. There is thick carpet so that you don't hear people walking. The director has a huge office with bay windows that has a beautiful view over the city or whatever. I've been in offices in Amsterdam where you could actually see the coast, which is 30 kilometers away, the North Sea, you could see. on a bright day. Beautiful, huge mahogany desk, very expensive tropical plants, and butlers walking around, silently, peeling fruit. They come with fresh fruit, all prepared. And all that I saw that they are doing behind their big mahogany desk is read the newspapers, drink their fresh coffee, eat their fruit, stare out the windows. It looks like they are doing nothing all day. You know what they're really doing? They're contemplating. But they don't have a yoga mat and a meditation cushion to create that condition. They have marble floors, very expensive carpet, luxury, silence. There are 2 or 3 layers that you have to go through to get to the director. The secretaries that are manning the front desk, they are like pit bulls. They will not let anybody in that has nothing to do there. And even if you, at the Schiphol airport, Amsterdam airport, the secretary there was famous for not letting us in. Then this guy would come out of he would open the door and say, "Hey guys," he was very jovial, very friendly. Always kind of making a fool of his secretary, but that's her job. And every month we had the same ritual. She would just not let us in, and then he would come out of his office and always have a nice chat while we were taking care of the plant. And what they're really doing is creating this atmosphere where the crown chakra naturally functions. Why is this important, do you think, for the board of directors or the chairman of the bank, of the Schiphol airport, Unilever? Why do you think they do this? And they spend so much money. It is the way to keep those companies going, to keep them profitable. Those directors make decisions involving billions of dollars and thousands of people. They cannot afford to make mistakes. And they do that in contemplation, in sheer silence. It looks like they are doing nothing all day. But that's the only way to keep them connected with all these billions of dollars. They have to put in the right place all those decisions they have to make, involving very complex processes and complex matter. You will see that you will become like a director. Maybe you cannot afford a mahogany desk and 3 centimeters thick carpet, woolen carpet, hand woven, and marble on your walls and what have you, and butlers walking around bringing you your favorite foods. But you will create your own heaven. You will create your own heaven. Yeah, that's the right word. Where you can hear the voice of your heart speak. People will accuse you of becoming a boring person, a boring friend, or a boring sister or brother. In the beginning, when you don't understand that yet, you start doubting yourself. What's wrong with me? Oh, maybe I'm getting old. No, it is because you are transforming. You become more sensitive, conscious. You need more time for yourself, I time. You need more I time. You need more moments that you can just be with yourself in silence. And it may, Ajita used the word insipid. Yogis are insipid. I say it with a smile because life will become simpler. Simpler so that you can handle more complex issues of life. And you do that in your crown chakra. You will become a natural manager, a natural director. It is likely that if you have a job as an employee, somewhere down the road you will start to have your own business. You become your own boss, very naturally. Because of this. You know, you know a little bit about my private life. In 2016, I was very, very busy, teaching 7 days a week, and that kind of broke my back. But I felt it was inevitable, something that I had to do because I had no alternative. And I thought if I just overcome, I see things as a test. When I encounter difficulties in life, I see it as a test. So I have to just pass the test, then something will come. Something will come up. Something did come up, but there was also not a good thing. But one thing leads to another, and eventually you get where you want to be. But instead of lamenting my misery, I kept a positive attitude, and like I did last year, adopting the dogs and focusing on their well-being. At that time, I focused on somebody, one of my students, who she went to Italy in an exchange program, Erasmus program, and after four or 5 months or so, she ended up in the emergency room. She had totally collapsed. She was walking bare feet, claiming that she had become Jesus Christ and what have you. And you think, oh my God, this is really bad. But she was very, very smart, very intelligent. She was in Yonsei University. And I know what happened. Most people don't, and the doctors don't, and the parents also had no idea. They were desperate. What happened with our daughter? So she came back to Korea. There was no other way that she could stay there. And I kind of guided her. I just sacrificed myself in kind of dire straits. But I wasn't focusing on that. I just did what I could do to keep going. And so she would just call my doorbell in the middle of the night or in the middle of the winter, freezing cold. She would come in shorts and a t-shirt. Totally ridiculous. All the way from Hapjeong, all the way to Yoido, walking. So, my God, I don't know how I did it while I was so busy also at the time. I just took care of her because nobody else did. Nobody understood what was wrong with her. But what I did was trying to create a situation that she felt stable. So I visited her house. She lived in Yeonnido. And she lived with her sister in a very, very small office cell. It's called the Tarakbang. It's with a loft. Very small and very cramped. And I sat there with her and I looked around and I realized immediately that she should not continue to live there because she would never be able to recover. And fortunately, her parents were very cooperative. In the beginning, they were very suspicious. They thought I was having a relationship with somebody 30 years younger than me. That was not the case, but I understand that they might have thought that. But they actually moved both siblings to a wider place, a place where it was chaos in that little small office cell. It's just nobody can thrive there, even if you're sound in mind, even if you're stable. So it took about 2 years. And it's just amazing how she's doing these days. She went back to Yonsei, she finished, graduated. She's in love, she has a boyfriend, and she had several jobs already. Just amazing how she's thriving now. All that was needed for her is to create a condition where she could be herself, but also stable. The doctor had no other way than to give her medicine. They gave her chemicals to change her brain. These days that seems to be very common in young people who have mental problems. I see you nodding and other people recognizing. But for me that is not the solution. You have to look at what is the cause of all that and how to get back to normal. There's nothing wrong with that girl. You know what I see? I see somebody who's very sensitive and very conscious. And when you're very young, that can be very overwhelming. And going abroad with no family around, no friends around, nothing familiar around at that young age, in that kind of unstable situation, that was just the trigger. So all you need to do, like I did with the dogs, I basically did with her. I just created the circumstance as much as I can, as much as I could, of stability. And totally recovered and so happy, and that makes me happy too, you know. That makes me happy too. It was stressful, it was difficult, but like with the dogs, there was no other way. When somebody knocks your door and asks for help, you cannot deny that not as a yogi. If you understand what's going on, you just can't. Regardless of the mess that it creates for you, there's no way that you can deny that. And most people do. They just have no idea, no clue. Anyway, what I'm trying the picture I'm trying to paint here is the importance of stability. If ever you end up in a situation of turmoil, desperation, take care of the basics and you will get through it. Take care of your daily routines. Practice yoga also. I'm at my best when I'm in an unstable situation. I have a military discipline to keep going. I get lazy when things become settled down. Until I start to hurt here and hurt there, and then I know I have to start moving again. But take care of the basics. You will see, you will get through. 14. Living in such a hermitage, the yogin, being free in mind of all cares, should practice only yoga all the time, in the way taught by his guru. So, taught by your guru. That means you need guidance. Yoga is very complex, is full of deep insights that need to be conveyed by somebody who has been initiated. And you will become initiated. You become the initiated one. You already noticed that if you read this text on your own, there's not much chocolate that you can make out of it. Or even worse, it's confusing. Or doesn't make sense or no logic at all. If you understand the practical meaning behind the symbolism, it becomes very logical and very practically very useful in a practical way. Practicing only yoga all the time, what does it mean? That you must practice yoga from early morning to late at night? Does it? That's impossible. Practicing yoga all the time, if you are in a condition like this, you are yoga, you become yoga. When you practice, of course, you are actually actively engaging in asana, in meditation, in energy control, or you're studying books. But there should be plenty time of doing nothing. Remember the story of the director sitting on his top floor behind his bay window, staring out over the city, doing nothing, seemingly doing nothing. It's very important to learn to do nothing. That is yoga. You can practice and be busy, then your practice does not lead to anything. We have to learn to do nothing. Because that is where you contemplate. That is where all the effect can take place of all that effort that you are doing. We live in a crazy world. There's a lot of pressure on us to be busy. So over time you will create a situation for yourself. You will try to find a balance. There are abilities, we have to go to work, take care of our family, what have you, those kind of things. But you will more and more put emphasis on the importance of your own time, quiet time. The director on the 14th floor of the office building doesn't need a yoga mat and a cushion. Money buys his spiritual condition. But for us, we need a yoga mat, we need some discipline. But yoga becomes you, and you become yoga. The word yoga in itself for me is very superficial. But yoga integrates into your daily life, 24 hours a day. How you eat, how you sleep, how you perceive the world, how you think, everything becomes yoga, naturally. That is the true or the real union or fusion that yoga is talking so much about. You become yoga, yoga becomes you, truly. That is yogacharya. That is being a real yogi. #15th Sutra, yoga fails by the 6 causes: overeating, overexertion, excessive talk, observance of unsuitable disciplines. Actually, they put unsuitable in square brackets, that's added later, so actually it said observance of disciplines. Promiscuous company and unsteadiness. Overeating, very simple. If you eat a lot, your digestion uses so much energy, there is no energy left to rise up and fuel your crown chakra. Everybody knows if you eat your favorite food and you take a second serving, you collapse. You're exhausted. So sometimes enjoy, but most of the times being austere with food really leaves you with large amounts of energy that fuel your crown chakra. It's healthy not to eat too much. We come back to dietary instructions next week. Overexertion. So you think you practice yoga 3 hours a day, 4 hours a day. That must be really, really good. No. Overexertion means you can do too much also, overshooting the goal. If you, or you have a full-time job and you're working 10 hours a day, 5 days a week, and you try to shoehorn in 2 hours of yoga practice in the morning or in the evening, it can be too much, you know. And then it can work counterproductive as well. So we need to find balance in that sense. Excessive talk. You will probably notice that you're less inclined to talk, especially when it comes to chit-chat. Can you chit-chat? I can't. And I have felt guilty about it in the past, or stupid, or inadequate. But it is just, I'm not interested in empty things. Not only talk, but also TV programs or books, or like if it's not real, if it's not related to life, it's not related to the reality, then it has no function. So, but if you talk about real things, in my case, I can't stop talking about yoga, but only if you're interested. And for the rest, I'm rather boring. Only talk, but that is natural, I think. And here it is kind of confirmed also. observance of disciplines. That is strange. Yoga is discipline, isn't it? In itself, it's a discipline. The whole framework, all the exercises. But to benefit from yoga, we need to have the discipline to practice, at least regularly. Because if you come to class only on Sundays and the rest of the week you don't spend any time on yoga at all, it's not bad in itself, but it's not very effective. It's like climbing a mountain and then sliding all the way back to the bottom and having to start all over again the next Sunday. So you practice a couple of times throughout the weekdays and you feel that it makes a difference. Instead of sliding back to the bottom, you stay somewhere on the slope of the mountain going towards the top. So, what this sutra is saying, the discipline should be avoided. Yoga fails because of discipline. There is good discipline and there is bad discipline. Sometimes, especially when you're very enthusiastic about something, let's say you become very enthusiastic about yoga. Wow, this feels so good and wow, what a discovery. So, you are resolved. You decide to practice yoga every day. Every morning, 6 o'clock, you jump out of bed, take a cold shower, and you jump on your yoga mat and you practice yoga for an hour. There are days that you don't really want to wake up at 6 o'clock. You feel lazy or tired because you were busy last day or slept late, or it's good that you don't give in too easily to those circumstances, but sometimes you have to allow yourself to be lazy. You know what happens if you force yourself to do yoga every day? Jump out of your bed 6 o'clock a.m., cold shower, jump on your yoga mat. You know what happens? After 3 weeks, you hate yoga. How can it be of any help? How can any discipline, any practice be of help if you start hating it? I guarantee you will start hating it if you force yourself. It's the same thing that happens with school children. You have that sad situation in Korea where school children go from regular school to hagwon to another hagwon. Most children hate school, hate studying because of that. And you function exactly the same. So in that sense, discipline can become a negative. But without discipline, nothing is achieved. So again, we have to find a balance. You know, my experience is, I do allow myself sometimes to skip practice. But it doesn't feel the same. The rest of the day I miss something. So I allowed myself to be lazy, but the realization that I don't feel the same as I felt yesterday after practice, that makes me determined to not skip tomorrow. In that way you have a natural discipline, driven by inner motivation, not just bluntly imposed on yourself because you think something is good. Because something that is good can turn bad. Good medicine can become poison. Then, promiscuous company. Yoga is best practiced alone. Here we have a class setting. You come to class to learn. But when you practice, it's best practiced alone. If you live in a household with other people, try to find time when all the other people are out of the house. Go to work or school or shopping or whatever. You already experienced, it is my guess, that if you live in a multiple person household, that other people's activity can be very disturbing when you try to practice yoga, even if they do not even enter into your room where you are. Just the fact that they turn on the music or watch TV with the volume a little bit loud, or people are chatting, talking very loudly to each other in another room, that can be very distracting, irritating, even to the point of irritation, that disturbing your yoga practice. It's best to find time where other people are simply not there. That is promiscuous company. When the word promiscuity is used, you usually think about sexuality or sexual relationships, but here promiscuity really means people that are not in line with what you are trying to achieve, on another wavelength. Unsteadiness. Well, unsteadiness, I just basically touched on that issue. That is when you're not regular in your practice, when you're easily distracted, choose to skip practice because you're distracted, because you allow yourself to be distracted. Unsteadiness. Sutra 16. Yoga succeeds by the 6 qualifications: zeal, bold determination, courage, true knowledge, firmness in the belief of the words of the Guru, and renunciation of company of unsuitable people. There are some pieces in between square brackets again. The text becomes a little bit different if you leave them out. First, zeal. You know the word zealot? Sounds a little bit like fanaticism. Zeal. You need zeal to succeed in yoga. Why? You need to have a drive. You need to be motivated. You need to work towards something. You need to engage. You need to make time, room. Otherwise it can't work. Bold determination, in the same vein. If this is what you have chosen to do, then don't let anybody change your mind. Don't let anybody distract you from your goal. Bold determination. Stay on track. Courage. Courage. Why would you need courage to practice yoga? You can just enjoy. That's true. But yoga leads to increased sensitivity and consciousness, and that in the first instance is always directed to ourselves. We start investigating ourselves as first. That means you start digging into your past. You start reflecting on past memories, past experiences that you basically never really thought of. And there will be happy memories, happy moments, happy experiences. But generally those are not really of interest. You're drawn towards the things that disturb you. Your traumas will come to the surface. Your bad memories will come to the surface of your consciousness. That requires courage. What requires courage is to look in that mirror and put the puzzle of who you really are together. That is the only way to move forward and to evolve, to grow. And that is a stage we all have to go through that can make us temporarily emotionally unstable. That does indeed require courage. I've mentioned before, a real yogi is a warrior. You are warriors, otherwise you wouldn't be here. Without courage, you would never be here. We often, as yogis, underestimate ourselves in that sense. But without warrior mentality, you wouldn't be able to go through all this. You don't need a gun, you don't need a sword. You have your consciousness as a weapon, your ability to distinguish. True knowledge. What is true knowledge? I can take a book and read the text from the book to you and say, this is true. Is that correct? It doesn't make sense, huh? That doesn't mean that the book is wrong, but look, maybe you remember when you were in school that there are teachers that are very popular and there are teachers that are very unpopular. And you think that you hate the subject that they are teaching. But it is the teacher, not the subject, that causes the resistance. You know why? If you look back now, you will see that the teacher that you didn't like, or the class that you didn't like, the teacher was just reading from a book and then sent you home with homework to memorize something. The teachers that were popular, they didn't even look at the book. They were teaching because they were enthusiastic about the subject. From inspiration, they would tell you an interesting story about that boring subject. That is the difference between just knowledge and true knowledge. True knowledge is there is a basis, a theoretical foundation, and based on that, you develop insights, and that you share. That is the true knowledge. The absence of which shows that the teacher is not a yogi. Because yoga naturally leads to inspiration. Firmness. Firmness is a little bit like the opposite of unsteadiness, the last one of the previous sutra. Firmness, determination. Firmness in belief in the words of the Guru. You can leave that out, but I have to say something about that. You may not like everything that I say. You may not agree with everything that I say. Sometimes you even feel resistance, wanting to walk away. But generally, overall, you connect with what we do here. You feel that you are benefiting from it. So you give me the benefit of the doubt. That is firmness of belief in the words of the Guru. You feel that I have no bad intention. On the contrary, I'm doing my best to provide you with something that you can benefit from, passionately. Then you forgive me my imperfections. That is this. Firmness in the belief of the words of the Guru. And then you have renunciation of company of unsuitable people. Actually, in between square brackets is the word unsuitable. Actually, it said renunciation of company of people, which indicates that you should isolate yourself like Tenzin Palmo did in the Himalayas in her hut for 12 years. It doesn't have to be that extreme, but you do need your time alone. And you can also use the word unsuitable because there are people who don't agree with what you do. When I started practicing yoga in 1984, and then in 1990 or so, I started studying with Ajita, 1988, 89. So, but that was also a time that I started a relationship. And I was used to being alone. I had been alone for 5 years or so after moving out from my mom's house. And I used to practice on my own. My new girlfriend used to, because she still lived with her mom, she used to come to my house frequently. I had just a small one-room studio. And one time she came just that I sat down to meditate. So I sat in the middle of the room and the doorbell rang and I opened the door and I couldn't send her away, of course. Maybe I should have. Just kidding. So I told her, okay, you know, I was just doing my yoga and just 15 minutes, okay? Give me 15 minutes. I will finish with my meditation and then we can have dinner or we can go out. So she sat down on the sofa with a magazine and I sat down on my cushion with my back towards her and I started concentrating on nada. And suddenly she started flipping the pages and it became more and more violent. And then she said, "What the hell are you doing?" I said, "I'm meditating." "Yeah, but you're just sitting there doing nothing." Okay. I put my cushion away and I just gave up. I realized it doesn't work. You just have to be alone. So, presence of unsuitable people, company of unsuitable people has to be avoided. What follows now is the yamas and the niyamas, but you have learned yamas and niyamas according to Patanjali. There are 5 of each. According to Svatmarama, there are 10, but you will see that many of them are overlapping. To do no harm, to speak the truth, to refrain from taking what belongs to another, to preserve continence, to practice forbearance, to have fortitude, to be merciful, to be straightforward, to be moderate in diet, and to be pure. These 10 constitute yama. Austerity, contentment, belief in God, charity, worship of God, listening to the exposition of Vedantic doctrines, modesty, a discerning mind, yapa, praying, sacrifice. These 10 constitute niyama, the experts in yoga say. I have nothing to add to that. We have very extensively talked about the yamas and niyamas. What is important is that you realize the purpose of those, which is to preserve sattva, to avoid situations that cause conflict or disturbance. 17, and the last one for today. Asanas are treated first because they form the first stage of Hatha Yoga. Asanas make one firm, free from maladies and light of limb. After laying the foundation with yama niyama, asana is the first real work that you start to do to change your condition. And remember that it is most effective. Any kind of exercise is always good for health, but for the purpose of yoga, for the development of yoga, asana should be done in the traditional way, standing still. That is where the magic happens. That is where the energy starts to be controlled. People who don't meditate but practice asana correctly, they also transform. They also have energy rising up and awakening the crown chakra. If you're busy and you have no time to do both asana and pranayama and concentration on nada, do your asana practice in silence and correctly, standing still, taking a little break after each asana, and you will feel like you can conquer the world after your practice. It's such an amazing start of the day. And laying the foundation for the rest that comes. Pranayama, mudra, and the higher forms of meditation. Questions? Okay, let's have a short break.